Welcome to NTRCA's first episode of RoofTop Talks, where we'll be talking with roofing industry experts and trainers to help you elevate your roofing business. I'm Karen Vermaire Fox, the longtime Executive Director of NTRCA, the North Texas Roofing Contractors Association, and today we will be talking with Don Lamont, one of our longtime members. Welcome, Don, and thanks for being here.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for having me on.
Let me tell you a little bit about Don. Don is the CEO of Don Lamont Public Adjusters, LLC, and the author of Storm Damage Assessment, a practical guide for assessing storm damage. The book covers the assessment of storm damage resulting from hurricanes, hailstorms, and tornadoes. Don and contributing authors, meteorologist Rocco Colaci, and Don's going to correct me if I said his name wrong, and attorney Javier Delgado covers the subject from storms to expert testimony. Don and his firm have successfully worked on hundreds of millions of dollars of storm damage claims, and Don is one of the premier adjusters in the United States today. He frequently helps commercial and industrial property owners, municipal government agencies, and homeowners with their insurance claims. In addition to Texas, he has worked damage claims that include everything from tornadoes and hailstorms in the Midwest to tropical hurricane damage along both U.S. coasts and the Caribbean. Don is also, and most importantly, a popular trainer for NTRCA's Elevate Roofing Education programs, where he helps North Texas roofing professionals understand the complicated practice of storm damage assessment. Now, before Don and I start talking, I just want to say, to cover both me and Don, that this conversation is in no way intended to offer legal advice and does not in any way take place of a consultation with an attorney or other professionals with appropriate expertise and experience. All right, now let's start. With that out of the way, tell us a little bit about your experience in roofing and the construction industry and how you came to be a premier storm damage assessment expert.
Well, with me, it all started in my family, as my father and my grandfather were both contractors. So I kind of grew up with a hammer in my hand. And some of my earliest memories with my dad, I was toting shingles or toting 2x4s or out on location with him, playing instead of working. But, you know, the older I got, the more responsibility that he would put on me to do more. So it was a love I had from a very early age.
Tell us a little bit more than you I know you took lots of training and you worked in lots of different aspects. How did you get where you are now?
Well, I was an entrepreneur at heart. And so when I was 18 years old, I started my first little construction company. And it was within that construction company, we did primarily roofing. So a lot of asphalt shingles, a lot of hot tar roofs, tar and gravel, what we call a BURG roof, a built-up roof with gravel. And so roofing has always been something I've had my hands in my entire life.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what is Don Lamont Public Adjusters and storm damage. What are you guys doing right now? What's your cool project? I know you're an entrepreneur. You've had lots of little businesses going on. What are you guys working on right now?
Okay, so we just settled a large loss from a hurricane, Hurricane Harvey, which was Corpus Christi Independent School District. I think they had 76 campuses. And over 6 million square feet, a lot of coal tar roofs, BURGs, and things like that. But right now, we're actually working for the Diocese of Lake Charles. And interesting claim, as there's a lot of churches and schools and mausoleums and a lot of damage there. And as everybody in the damage industry knows, it's always amazing to see what a storm can do.
Oh yeah.
And so, yeah, you get a real respect for those storms when you go and see the damage that it does.
Sure.
So we're doing a lot of expert work there as well. A lot of hotels, a lot of churches, a lot of big buildings, large lots of hospital, things like that.
Fascinating. Very cool. Okay. So you teach a course for NTRCA called Storm Damage Assessment, and it's based off your book that you wrote with the same name. What makes this course unique, and why would you think someone in NTRCA should take it?
Well, I think it's unique in that it's a lot of practical skills that a lot of us use every day. That's actually written down in a simple format for especially the adjuster or average working roofer that doesn't have time to do a lot of education, or may not know he needs that. So it's a practical guide, and it goes from, you know, hail damage to hurricanes to wind damage. It talks about dealing with insurance companies, and it just talks about being an expert.
And I love that. I've heard you say this before at some of your things. You talk that you need experience, you need knowledge, you need education and certification. And I've heard you say, and so for a roofing contractor, as well as a public adjuster, as well as a manufacturer or supplier, I think anybody in the industry needs those things. Talk a little bit about some of those things and how you think your average contractor and your average person in the industry goes about getting experience, knowledge, education, protocols, certification.
Sure. I think the first thing is experience. You know, every time you get on a roof and you see a different type of roof, or you see some type of damage, you're gaining some experience. And then, of course, if you need an engineer or a roof consultant, or possibly someone you work with in your industry, you'll start to gain knowledge about what has happened. And then when you kind of put that together with some education, some practical online education or book education, or even possibly school, then it begins to really give you some real clarity on what's going on. And then, of course, you take the courses that you become certified. And once that happens, then you have what you need to make an opinion about damage that can withstand the test of time, or even possibly a courtroom battle that may take place where you're an expert.
All right. So I love the advice you give in your book. Experience is a tool that nobody can take away from you. We talked a little bit about this. Every time you talk with a supplier or a subcontractor or anybody that you mentioned, public adjuster, whoever it is, the homeowner, you said, keep a log of everything you do. What kind of logs have you used, and why do you think this is so important?
Okay, well, that's a great question. I use ClickTime, or now the girls have me on a new one. I think it's called ClockShark. And I try to put notes in there. And then, of course, I always try to write reports. And then when I write reports, I have binders, and they're getting quite full, and I'll take some of the littler jobs out and put in the bigger ones, you know, because you don't need an exhaustive history if you do a lot of work. But start to build that portfolio of history that's yours. It's your very own. It's going to help you whether you're looking for a job or whether you're looking for a contract, or especially if you start to get certifications or any other type of education. It's going to give you a documented background of what you've done. So in this industry, whether you're a roofer or a public adjuster or an adjuster, you're going to come to a point where you're going to be asked for a deposition. And in that deposition, they're going to drill you, and they're going to drill you about everything. And the first thing they try to drill you on is, what are your qualifications? What makes you an expert? Why have you opined on this particular roof and this type of damage? And even if you haven't done any certifications, if you have kept a log of any online courses you've done, or even the jobs that you've worked on. Oh, we worked on the Sears building, we worked on the high-rise downtown, you know, I worked here, I was a foreman, I was a worker, I know how to do this. And basically, you've created your expertise, because experience matters. There's a lot of experts out there that work from the insurance company side that have a lot of book smarts, but they couldn't do a hot weld or even know how to start a kettle on a BRG roof. So we're guys, you know, that do it every day. That's like nothing. You know, they know how to set up a ladder. They know how to tie off a ladder. They know how to, you know, put safety lines up. They know how to do all this stuff, where a lot of these experts, they don't have that. So, you know, they might be an engineer, but you may know more than they do when it comes to actually how that roof works. And it's amazing to me how many times we have to answer detailed questions about roofing products to engineers on roofs. But you know, us in the industry that work with it every day, we do that.
I love that. It makes me think of this one time I got audited by the Texas Workforce Commission, and I had a notebook, 3 years of different notebooks of every receipt, invoice, everything. And I still have them. And that saved my life. I know that notebook, I'm like, here's my notebook, you can go through it. And they did, and it saved my life. So I love that idea of like whatever your documentation system is. It can be electronic, it could be a notebook, like you said, it could be some type of something. I think that I loved that advice. I think that's a great piece of advice that I thought everybody should take away from your book.
Yeah, and you know what's amazing too is when you're trying to recall something 2 years later, it's real difficult because you know you may have been on 500 roofs in a 2-year period, and so to remember details, and that's why I teach my guys, have a roof CAD or an aerial sketch of the roof, write on the back notes, or have some type of note-taking capability, whether it's your phone or whatever. Save that in a file, save it where you have that, and 2 years later you can look at your notes and remember everything, because all you need is a little glimpse into where you were or a photo, and the next thing you know, you remember it all. So it's so important in our industry, especially as combative as claims have become over the past few years.
Sure. I thought that was, I really did. I thought it was worth the, you know, price of your book to learn that piece of advice. I suppose we've given it away now, but everyone should still go buy your book. All right. So we talked a little bit about protocols and how it applies to excellent roofing contracting. And you define a protocol as a code of prescribing strict adherence to correct etiquette and precedents. How can contractors in North Texas create a protocol that makes them even better than they are now?
I think protocol is so important because, once again, if you're in a combative situation, they're going to ask you, what is your protocol, or how do you do this? How does your company do this? You know, and it's real confusing if one guy does it one way and another guy does it another way, and then you try to come up with some type of, you know, coalition or agreement on the results. Everything we do, we peer review inside our company. So if I go out and look at something, I'm taking photos, and there's a way I do that. And in taking those photos, and part of that protocol of assessment, I'm also coring the roof. And so I know what the roof is made out of. And so all that's part of our protocol that we go down. And so when I go back to my team and I say, hey, here's the damage I'm seeing, their first question is, what kind of insulation does it have? How many plies are there? You know, is it coal tar? Is it a regular asphalt roof? I mean, what is it, a TPO, or are there multiple roofs? All of these questions through experience will give you an insight of what kind of damage you may have, because there's a lot of things that cause problems with roofs. And of course, one is workmanship, and the other is deterioration, you know, or just the roof's old, okay? And that's not covered under the policy. Those two are not covered under the policy. But they need to be shown, and then of course, the damage that comes from the storm. And that needs to be documented, and make sure it's not one or the other.
And I know you and I have talked about it in the past, even protocol of how you come to someone's house and what the steps are when you unload a truck and put the ladders up and take the shingles off, and what your step is, your protocol for while you're on the roof, and how you put the application on. And then having like some kind of checklist at the end. Did you put the flashing on correctly? Did you get the vents in correctly? And that is done exactly the same every single time. And you and I have talked about that really successful contractors have that kind of protocol from the start to the finish of their job to show exactly how they do it. And you do it the same time every time. And I know not every roof is the same, but the protocol can be applied the same way, even if you're putting on a different type of roof.
Absolutely. And even it even works for your subcontractors, you know. If you have a protocol for them, check the nailing pattern on the decking, okay? As we know, that can be a huge problem down the road, okay? You know, make sure your drip flashing is installed correctly. You know, it goes this way, you know, details attached. You're flashing around your chimneys, you know, they're like this, and they, you know, this has to be caulked and has to be done an exact way. Or, you know, don't bend the flashing, you know, don't bend it over and hammer it down and put a nail in it, right? I mean, as simple as that is, that's where most contractors' biggest problems come from, right?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love that you're helping contractors learn those kinds of ideas. I think that's such an important thing. So one of the things you talk about is ethics, and NTRCA has an ethics policy, and you mentioned some of those pieces of advice. What are some of these pieces, and how has following them helped you over time?
Well, I think the first thing that I'd like to say about that is remember that we're all human beings. Okay, the adjuster, the engineers, you know, all that work for the insurance company, the subcontractors, we're all human beings. Everyone should be treated with dignity and respect and honor. And, you know, I tell people I don't agree with my wife half the time. So, you know, I don't throw her off of a roof or threaten her or yell at her, okay? And so there's no reason for that to be in our industry, okay? If you don't agree with something, you don't agree. So you try to then use your skills of your experience, your knowledge, your education, your certifications to explain to them why this is damaged or why they need to replace it or repair it. And that then becomes more of a talk than a shouting match. And I think that's one of the big things. And the other thing is call it like it is. You know, our industry can't afford to have you know, fraudulent claims. It ruins the entire industry on all sides. And then the next thing you know, it only takes one fraudulent claim where someone's either made the damage or, you know, hit it with a hammer or something like that, to where they're now looking for boogeymans. Everybody's a boogeyman, and every time they come out, they're looking for, you know, mechanical damage that was caused or something crazy, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing is treat the damage almost like a crime scene. Don't let people rub it, or don't let them, you know, put a metal point on it, or you know, anything that, you know, just, it is what it is. Document it, keep it safe until the adjusters can see it or the engineers, and you know, kind of treat it almost like a crime scene. Like, hey, we don't want to, you know, walk over this. We don't want to, you know, mess with it or manipulate it in any way, and just let the adjusters see it, and then go from there.
All right, the dog was barking, so I had to mute the screen.
No
It was like, oh, great. It's a problem with filming at home. Okay, so I think that advice is awesome. I want to know two things about you that don't have anything to do with storm damage assessment and the roofing industry.
Okay. You want me to tell you two things about me?
I want you to tell me two things about you that don't have anything to do with storm damage assessment or roofing.
Okay, great. Well, I absolutely love animals. I have a ranch in about 2 hours west of Fort Worth. I have quarter horses and love to ride horses. My wife and I, we love to go load up our horses, which like we're going to do this afternoon, and we love to go trail riding and just be with animals. You know, I just love animals. So that's the first thing. The second thing, I love to fly, and my favorite flying is STOL, which is a little bush plane. And that's what I love to do. I do some STOL competitions. We land on gravel bars and beaches and stuff like that. And I land at my ranch. I just built a runway at my house, which is pretty short.
Oh my
But,
gosh.
it's all fun. Yeah, I love to do stuff like that.
I love that. How many grandchildren do you have now?
I have 20 grandchildren.
20. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like somewhere around 18. And so I wasn't.
Yeah, well, since I seen you last, they dropped a few more.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. Last question. What's the best piece of advice anyone ever gave you? And if you could give one piece of advice to someone in the roofing contracting business, what would it be?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I think the best advice anyone ever gave me was the first step on or the last step off from a ladder is your most critical step you'll take all day. Pay attention. Don't have anything in your hands. Make sure the ladder's tied off. That has saved my life. And the few times that I didn't adhere to that, it almost killed me. So that's the first thing. And then the second question was what? What's
one piece of advice you'd give to someone else?
I think the best advice I can give to someone else in the roofing business is take pride in your work, satisfy your customers to the best of your ability, work hard, and everything else will be okay.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, I know I said that was the last question, but is there anything I left out that you want to say that I didn't think to ask you?
Well, I think that we could talk a little bit about testing.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So as you know, I'm part owner in a laboratory that's a licensed engineering firm, and we are like within 30 days of being A2LA certified, which I think we're going to be the only lab that does roofing samples in the nation that's A2LA certified.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Somebody may prove me wrong, but it's a lot of what you talked about. It's a lot of the protocols. Everything has to be written down and posted. Everything has to be done 100% of the time, the same way all the time. Your training has to be regular, and it also has to all be written down, and everybody's trained exactly the same way. You also have to have a protocol for if there's a breakdown in some chain within that test. If somebody does something wrong, there has to be a protocol for identifying why did it happen, what can you do to fix it, and train then others in the company that will not make that same mistake. So there's tons and tons of paperwork, but it's really, really good because it really teaches us how important the small things are. If we're going to testify in court, that's the first thing they want to do is they want to, break you down in some kind of way. They want to shoot holes in your testing. So for all of those that are going to take samples, make sure that you mark it well. You know where it is on the roof. I recommend a roof CAD or something that you actually write it down. You take photos, not just up close, but you want photos far enough away you can identify on the roof where that is and where it was taken, and then take the close-up one. So the first one's far away, the second one's a little closer, then the last one is right. Mark the area of interest of the reason you took the core, or write down the reasons for why you took the core. When you take the core, remember a sample that needs to be desaturated needs to be 12 inches by 12 inches. It can be a little bit bigger, but we like to have 12 inches, close to 12 inches by 12 inches. That's the ASTM standard. So then when you do, try to double bag it, mark on the bag the address or your number, your claim number, whatever that is, and then make sure that is, you can go online to our website, coreforensic.com, and you can find chain of custody. Fill that chain of custody out sign it, then put it in the mail and make a note of it. Because when we get it, our first pictures of your box, okay, before we even open it, and then the labels, and then the box inside, and then so we know what was shipped to us, exactly in what kind of condition. So I think that, when you do take test cuts, just make sure that you track it well. Don't throw it up on top of the HVAC unit until the end of the day, okay? Don't throw it in the back of your truck with all your tools. Put it in, double bag it, put it in the front seat, or if it's wet, I would double bag it, seal it, and put it in an ice chest or some type of controlled environment, so that when we get to the lab, it's not dried out from sitting in the sun for 2 days.
Yeah.
And overnight it, get it here quick so we can do a gravimetrical analysis, which is we'll distract the water and weigh it both before and afterwards and get the percentage of moisture. So testing is really, really important. Another thing I say, don't let the insurance companies take the best samples, okay? Unless you've agreed on a lab and you know the lab well, okay? Because I've had samples lost, I've had samples never show up, I've had samples, as soon as they do the sample, there's no damage, and then they throw them away, and that was the best damage we had, so keep the best ones for yourself.
Keep the best ones for yourself. Yeah. I love the line. I love the line in your book that you said, the longer you stand on the roof, the more the story it's going to tell you,
Absolutely.
right? That don't rush through the process, take your time, look for all of the things, because the longer you're on the roof, the more story it's going to tell you about what it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So most people are, they get on a BURG roof, gravel ballasted asphalt roof, and they look around and, they're like, wow, and there was a big hailstorm. Start to try to look at the soft metals, start with the hail size. If the hail was really small, then, the likelihood of it damaging that BURG you're just be looking at the parapets and other things. I mean, there are some really, really large stones that are mixed in with some small stones. So I was on a very large roof the other day in North Dallas, and that little storm that came through a month or so ago.
Yeah.
And I'm looking around, and all of a sudden I see the aluminum soft vents, and they're all real small. I'm like, oh, not much. Then I go walk over to another vent, and there's one giant hit. I mean, it was big, and I measured it, and I could see fresh spatter, and I'm like, this is a big hit. It was mixed in this. The more I looked, the more I realized there was about one large stone per square. The harder I looked, the more damage I started to find.
Yeah.
I found fractures in the parapets. I found an actual bruise in the BURG. And so the roof needs to be replaced, but I almost missed it because I was just looking at one little vent. So hailstorms are different. They're kind of crazy. So you have to be careful.
Okay. So you teach this class for NTRCA. So a lot of this stuff that we've talked about is going to be more in depth if people sign up and come to that class. Okay. Great. So just everybody should watch for when we're offering those classes, because you usually do 1 or 2 for us a year, and we appreciate that. And we know it's great learning and good learning for everybody who's involved. The other thing that I was thinking about is just thank you. And we appreciate your time. And I'm not going to forget that line of whatever the first step you take on a ladder going up or the first step you take coming off, you should pay attention to, because
absolutely.
We always have to keep everybody safe. So that was great. Yeah.
So true.
All right. Well, thank you for being our first Rooftop Talk guest. I love it.
Longtime friend.
Yes. So nice to do it with somebody I know so well.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Great job.